The wind blew hot and dry across the Texas plains, carrying with it the scent of dust, sweat, and loneliness. It was 1887, and the town of Dry Creek lay half buried in sand and sorrow. Wooden signs creaked in the wind, horses neighed in protest, and the saloon's piano played a tune too tired to sound cheerful. Into this forgotten town rode Samuel Grayson, a man carved from the same rough land he lived on, quiet, broad-shouldered, and marked by years of solitude. Samuel hadn't planned to stop for long. He only needed feed, tools, and maybe a bottle of whiskey to ease the silence of his ranch. But fate had a different bargain waiting. As he tied his horse outside the general store, a crowd caught his attention near the old trading post. Curious, he walked closer and saw a sight that froze him in place. A young woman standing beside a wagon, her wrists bound loosely, her eyes cast down. Her mother, a sharp-faced woman with greed in her gaze, shouted to the crowd, "She's healthy, strong, and can work. She's got a child on the way, but that don't make her useless. I'll sell her cheap." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Some laughed, others turned away. The girl stood still, trembling slightly, a single tear tracing a clean line down her dusty cheek. Samuel noticed the way she cradled her stomach, protectively, instinctively. Her mother spat on the ground. "No one wants her. Fool girl went and got herself in trouble. I've got mouths to feed. If someone wants her, speak now or I'll send her to the rail yard." Samuel's hands clenched. The memory of his own wife, long gone, lost to fever years ago, flickered painfully in his mind. He'd buried her beneath a cottonwood tree and had lived in silence ever since. Looking at the girl, something inside him stirred, something that refused to watch another soul be thrown away. He stepped forward. "I'll take her." The mother blinked, surprised. "You serious?" He didn't answer. He reached into his coat, pulled out the money, and placed it in her hand. She counted quickly, smiled coldly, and said, "She's yours now. Good luck with the trouble." Samuel untied the rope around the girl's wrists. She flinched when his fingers brushed her skin, but he spoke gently, "You'll come with me. No one's gonna hurt you." She didn't speak, only nodded once, her eyes wary but curious. They walked to his wagon in silence. The sun burned low on the horizon, turning the town golden red. Behind them, the crowd dispersed, their laughter fading into the dry wind. As they rode away from Dry Creek, the girl sat quietly in the back of the wagon, her hands resting on her stomach. Samuel didn't look back, but he could feel the weight of what he had just done, an impulsive act that would change both their lives. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. All he knew was that somewhere between the dust and the setting sun, he had bought more than a burden. He had bought a fragile chance at redemption. The wagon rolled through the endless Texas plains, the sky stretching wide and empty above. The young woman sat in the back, clutching her belly protectively, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Samuel Grayson drove in silence, the reins loose in his weathered hands. He wasn't a man of words, never had been. His life on the ranch had taught him that silence was safer than promises. By nightfall, the outline of his ranch appeared, a modest house built of rough timber, a barn leaning slightly from age, and a few horses grazing near a worn fence. It wasn't much, but it was home. When Samuel stopped the wagon, he turned to her and said quietly, "You can rest here. Nobody's going to bother you." She hesitated before stepping down, her bare feet touching the dry earth. The place felt strange yet calm, far from the noise of town. Samuel led her inside. The air smelled of pine wood and smoke. "You can use this room," he said, opening the door to a small space with a bed and a window overlooking the valley. "There's stew on the stove if you're hungry." She nodded but said nothing. Her silence didn't bother him, he understood it. He'd lived with the same kind of silence since the day he buried his wife. That night, he sat on the porch, listening to the wind hum through the grass, wondering what kind of pain drove a mother to sell her own child. Inside, the girl ate slowly. She hadn't tasted warm food in days. When she finally lay down, she whispered her first words in days, "Thank you." The next morning, Samuel found her already awake, sweeping the porch. "You don't have to work," he said. She looked at him, her dark eyes steady. "I want to." He only nodded and went to the stables, a quiet respect forming between them. Days passed in a steady rhythm. Samuel worked the fields while the girl, he still didn't know her name, tended the house. She moved carefully, aware of every sound and shadow. Her belly grew, but so did her strength. She learned to cook better meals, to brush the horses, to mend clothes. Sometimes, Samuel caught her humming softly, a tune that seemed older than both of them. One evening, after dinner, the silence between them finally broke. She stood by the firelight and said, "My name is Anna." Samuel looked up from his chair. "Anna," he repeated quietly, as if the name itself softened the air. "It suits you." She smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering in the firelight. "Why did you buy me?" He stared into the flames for a long time before answering. "Because no one should be thrown away like that." For the first time, Anna felt warmth not from the fire, but from his words. That night, as the wind whispered across the plains, she realized she was no longer just a burden or a price paid. She was someone's choice, and maybe, for the first time, she had found safety in the quiet. Spring came softly that year, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and rain that never lasted long. The barren land around Samuel's ranch began to show hints of green again, and for the first time in years, laughter returned to its walls. It started small, a shy chuckle from Anna when a stubborn goat stole her washing, a faint smile when Samuel tried to fix the roof and nearly fell off. The silence that once ruled their home was slowly replaced by something warmer, something alive. Samuel had begun to look forward to every sunrise. He would wake early, not just to tend the horses but to hear Anna humming in the kitchen, her soft voice mingling with the sound of crackling firewood. The woman he had once found trembling and hopeless was now strong, radiant, and expectant. The child inside her grew, and so did her courage. Sometimes she would sit on the porch at dusk, hands resting on her belly, watching the sun sink behind the hills. Samuel often joined her, sitting a few feet away, respectful of the space between them. They didn't need many words. He had learned to understand her silence, she had learned to trust his presence. One night, a storm rolled across the plains. Lightning lit the sky, and thunder shook the walls. Samuel was mending the stable doors when he heard her scream. He dropped his tools and ran inside. Anna was doubled over, clutching her stomach, her face pale and drenched in sweat. "It's time," she gasped. Samuel froze for only a heartbeat before springing into action. He carried her to her bed, brought clean water, and lit every lamp he could find. Rain hammered the roof as the storm raged outside. Inside, the battle for new life began. Hours passed. Anna cried out, clutching his hand with all her strength. Samuel had never felt so helpless, a man who'd wrestled wild cattle and fought bandits now trembling at the sight of her pain. "You can do this, Anna," he whispered. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known." Then, just as the storm began to fade, a small, sharp cry filled the room. Samuel looked down in disbelief, a tiny baby boy, crying fiercely, alive and perfect. He wrapped the child in a blanket, his rough hands shaking as he handed him to Anna. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she kissed the baby's forehead. "He's yours too," she whispered, her voice breaking. Samuel stared at her, stunned. "Mine," she nodded, smiling through exhaustion. "You saved both of us. This is your miracle too." Samuel sat beside her, his heart heavy and light all at once. For years, he had prayed for something to fill the emptiness his wife's death had left behind. Now, in this fragile, unexpected moment, he realized God had answered, not with words, but with life. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, Samuel looked at Anna and the sleeping child and whispered, "Welcome home." The sun rose gently over the Texas plains, brushing the sky with pink and gold. The storm had passed, leaving behind the scent of wet earth and a calm only nature could grant after chaos. Inside the small wooden house, peace had found a home. The baby slept in a handmade cradle beside the fireplace, while Anna rested nearby, her hair loose, her face soft with exhaustion and contentment. Samuel sat on the porch, watching the sunlight spill over the fields. His heart, once a hollow shell of memories and regrets, now felt full, too full. He could still hear the faint cries of the newborn from the night before, each one reminding him that life, against all odds, had chosen to return to his lonely ranch. When Anna stepped outside, wrapped in a shawl, he stood quickly. "You should be resting," he said. She smiled faintly. "I've rested enough. I wanted to see the morning." Her voice carried a peace that made him fall silent. She moved closer, the baby in her arms, his tiny face half hidden beneath the blanket. Samuel looked at the child, awe still fresh in his eyes. "He's strong," he murmured. Anna nodded. "He is. Stronger than both of us." She looked up at him then, her expression soft. "I was afraid to live again. I thought life had ended the day my mother sold me. But you," she paused, searching for words, "you showed me that people can still be kind." Samuel swallowed hard, turning his gaze toward the horizon. "I didn't do much," he said quietly. "You saved yourself. You just needed a place to remember who you were." For a while, they stood in silence, the wind brushing through the prairie grass. Then Samuel asked, "What will you name him?" Anna smiled, looking down at the baby's tiny hand curled around her finger. "Hope," she said softly. "Because that's what he is, a hope I thought I'd lost forever." Samuel repeated the name under his breath. "Hope." He nodded slowly. "Then hope it is." The days that followed were unlike any Samuel had known. The ranch that had once echoed with loneliness now sang with laughter, the clatter of dishes, and the cooing of a child. Anna took to motherhood as if she had been born for it. She worked beside Samuel, planting new crops and painting the old barn. Together, they rebuilt not just the land, but their broken spirits. Sometimes, in the evenings, Samuel would sit with the baby on his lap, humming old cowboy tunes. Anna would watch from the doorway, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. Months later, the ranch stood greener than it had in years. The fences were strong, the horses well fed, and the home alive with warmth. Samuel looked at Anna one evening as the sun dipped low and said quietly, "This place was just a ranch once. Now it's a home." Anna reached out, taking his hand. "And a family," she whispered. As the sky turned to fire and the wind carried the scent of blooming sage, Samuel realized the truth. The miracle he had waited for wasn't just a child. It was love reborn in a place where hope had once died. And beneath that vast, golden sky, the three of them, Samuel, Anna, and little Hope, rode into a new life, where every sunrise promised redemption.